I'm Doug, I'm the Head Digital at the Electoral Reform Society.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm the Membership and Digital Officer at the Electoral Reform Society. So we make up 2/3 of the digital team at the ERS. And if you've not heard of us before, we're a campaign organisation working to achieve a better democracy across the UK. Primarily, we're campaigning to change the voting system in Westminster and for local councils in England and Wales. But we also campaign in other areas, making the case for lasting political reforms in which every voice is heard, every vote is valued equally, and every citizen is empowered to take part. We're a small team, but we work across the whole of the UK with offices in London, Cardiff and Edinburgh. And our case study today will take you through a project that we undertook last year in which an opportunity presented itself in Wales to mobilise supporters at a very local level to influence change.
Is that working? There we go. So, if you don't know, first past the post means it's very hard to get the representatives who actually vote for. At the local level, it means that your supporters will find it hard often to kind of influence council decisions because their votes just don't matter. This is what happens in local elections. These are some come from Wales. You can see the vote share and the seat share kind of just switching almost randomly around, with some parties getting extra votes, extra seats, some parties getting less, the positions changing around. If you come third, suddenly you're first, and this kind of thing. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, though, they use proportional representation, which is what we campaigned for, and roughly the votes and the seats would match. That means that voters can actually control the general direction of council decisions. Next. So we want to see every council in the UK use the same system they use in Scotland and Wales for their local elections. So after a lot of campaigning in Wales, we managed to get this bill passed, which is the Local Government Elections Wales Act 2021, which allows councils to move individually to proportional representation. But it is quite a process to get them to do it. So they have to run a consultation, they have to pass a resolution, they have to do it 3 years before the next council election. So you have these narrow windows, and so this was our deadline, the 15th of November 2024. They need a 2/3 majority in the chamber to actually do it, and they're only allowed to do it once per term. So it was stacked against us.
So this is a lovely picture of our team in Wales, ERS Cymru, who've been the ones working very hard getting this issue on the table in Wales. And their public affairs work with key stakeholders and politicians is massively pushing change for democracy in Wales. Particular Matt in the back of the photo, who's also here to hear us talk about him, has spent most of his time last year driving across Wales, meeting with local councillors all across the country. So back in London, it was our job to support this work on the ground with a digital campaign to boost support. So our main tasks were as follows. So to have any kind of success in using supporters to achieve this influencing of local councillors, we really needed to boost the amount of people that we had on our list in Wales. This was particularly important in areas of rural Wales, as it was not an area where we had very many supporters to begin with. Most of our existing supporters were in the south and kind of Cardiff. We could then, hopefully with these boosted numbers, use this to provide evidence for the team meeting with local councillors that support was there in those local areas, but as well mobilise those supporters to take advocacy actions themselves. Plus everything we had to do twice because it had to be translated into Welsh.
So the first thing we did was kind of a fairly basic Facebook ad campaign across Wales, linked to these 3 hand raisers we sort of ran as tests. The Forward Action had made these templates for a previous campaign, so we sort of got to reuse them. And each one of these has a slightly different framing, so we went for kind of urgency, which highlighted this deadline that all the councils faced, the democracy deadline, we called it. We did one that was sort of Welsh exceptionalism, which was that Wales is always at the forefront of democratic reform and it should be there again. And the final one, which is first past the post is bad, we called it, which explained that first past the post is bad. After signing any of these actions, the users then got sort of put through into a daisy chain to an email to target action, where they could write to the local councillor and say that they wanted a consultation in their local area and eventually to move to proportional representation. So we built this email to target using the unitary councillor database with some sample messages, and then we chained the 2 pages together by kind of adding this question mark chain at the end of the link, so that when they moved over from page 2 of the petition to page 1 of the email to target action, any data they'd already entered would get auto-filled over. We considered chaining them straight to the sort of the second page of the email to target action, but because of the email to target, you have to ask more details, like their street address and this kind of thing. We didn't want to ask that for the hand raiser, so they had to enter those extra bits. On top of that, we also had a redirect and filter for anyone who'd signed this. Maybe they're on holiday in Wales, but didn't actually live there. So if you put a non-Welsh postcode, you got redirected to a sort of a static page that said, oh, this is only people that live in Wales, but if you want to sign our petition for the rest of the country, you can. So after running this for a while, 3 councils announced that they were going to do consultations, Gwynedd, Powys and Ceredigion, handily the 3 largest by size, so it looks very impressive. But there are a lot of councils in South Wales. So these 3 councils started the process, organised the consultations. We started trying to influence these. We had to change the sort of setup of our email to target tools because we wanted to have specific messages for people that lived in the sort of consultation areas versus people that lived outside the consultation areas. So we created new email to target tool, and then updated the original email to updated the original one with a new redirect, so that once you put your postcode in, if you lived in the consultation area, you got moved over to this kind of second tool with the specific letters, and everyone else remained in the old tool or got filtered over to the static page for England if they were there.
So once we knew which areas we needed to target, we basically wanted to identify where our supporters in Wales were. So we used the Engaging Network supporter mapping to match supporters to the various areas based on their postcode. And I think it's actually not popped up yet.
There we go.
Oh, if you consider email kind of open rates, our existing levels of support were just not at a level where we felt that we could sway any kind of consultation. So having this in mind and now having a focused approach on these 3 council areas, we set up a second hand raiser ad campaign to recruit supporters there so that we could target those people specifically.
So in order to get more people in the consultation areas, we decided to change the hand raisers we used. One of the things that we find at the Electoral Society, we campaign on quite a lot of different democratic issues, and some of them are quite cheap to recruit people. Anything involving Liz Truss was an absolute godsend for us. And other issues which are more technical or technocratic, it's very hard to get people to sort of sign petitions for. So we thought we'll roll out some of these more engaging hand raisers in those areas that we are running campaigns on nationally anyway, but we'll just do specific ones for them. And then daisy chain those people to be like, well, if you care about the state of democracy in X area, then what about local democracy? Did you know this thing's happening? Write to your councillor. So we made sort of Welsh-specific hand raisers, opposing voter ID, which is one of our campaigns, opposing Liz Truss's resignation honours, which, it was an absolute godsend for us, and supporting proportional representation in Westminster. And then we also kept on one of the best succeeding of the original set, so that we had one that was just about local PR. And then all of these hand raisers had these daisy chain asked about the local PR issue. We use separate tracking codes on each ad group to keep track of how many people then actually went on to send an email to their councillor. The thinking was that the very cheap rate of people signing the Liz Truss one, even though less of them would send an email, because it's not directly related to local PR, we might actually get a cheaper email to councillor by doing it that way than by asking them directly about local PR. Thankfully, because we set up these tracking codes, we could work out the cost per email sent to councillor, and it turned out that idea was entirely wrong. And that even though the local PR petition was the most expensive to get someone to sign it, it was the cheapest in order to get someone to actually write a letter to their councillor. So it just kind of proves the importance of making sure you're tracking the right thing, and not just the thing that's easiest to track. There we go. So we managed to boost all of our supporters. The areas where we already had the most support, I kind of had the lowest growth, but everywhere we managed to have quite large quite large growth. I mean, the numbers are still kind of small at a national level, but considering how kind of local politics is, having kind of anyone in any of these areas was still very, very important.
So yeah, kind of going down to understanding the levels of support we had and in what areas. As I said earlier, while we were trying to build support online with the public, our team was spending, specifically Matt, was driving around Wales, meeting councillors from all three areas face to face, kind of trying to convince them to support and vote for the move. And having the data about the levels of support in these areas was vital, specifically down to ward level, because when he was meeting with the local councillor, being able to say this many people in your area support it was just hugely important. So what we basically did is we used the district council ward lookup maps data and made a chart in Flourish so we could help our team easily see where we were having levels of support, where we were maybe behind in some areas. But we also made one kind of mapping what councillors had, how many emails they'd received. And essentially nearly every single councillor in all three areas eventually was contacted by at least one person. And we were, you know, Matt would often tell us that even though there might even just be a really small amount of people in each area, having any level of support was music to their ears, because it just was making a real impact to local councillors who, unlike in Westminster, local councillors are just not used to being lobbied in this way, and 4 or 5 emails on a topic would make it seem massive to them. So it's really kind of, in this sense, a complete opposite effect of email to targets in Westminster, where you worry about flooding someone's inbox. This, even a small kind of few people are making a difference. Oh, it's me again. So we sent so many emails during this time, and it was kind of trying to get those people that we'd brought on to the list to actually take some sort of action. So from educating them on the process, because probably a lot of them might have been interested in local democracy, but they might not know the consultation was happening or the vote was happening. So we needed to educate them on that, to encouraging them to actually fill in the consultations, and continually encourage them to write to their local councillors to support the move. So we basically mapped out an email calendar with weekly meetings with our Welsh team to kind of work out what was needed for that week and what if we had everything we needed. So in the 3 months that this campaign took place, we built over 40 different email campaigns to our subscribers in the areas. On the consultation itself, we did have the option of maybe setting up an email to target to for people to send the consultations directly to the council. We opted not to do this because it was kind of complicated and there was lots of data that we needed that wasn't needed for us. So we sent them directly to the council built pages. But to kind of avoid over spamming people, we built a page in Engaging Networks which asked people, did you actually do the consultation? And if you do, tell us so we don't keep reminding you. So we also need to do it all twice because it needed to be in Welsh. We needed translations for every bit of page, social and email copy. But obviously on top of this, we had the 3 different council areas with the 3 different kind of, they might have slightly different messaging depending on, you know, historic elections. So it wasn't just about building each email twice, it was about building it 6 times. So it was quite a lot of emails to be sent.
So we handle these translations in sort of 2 main ways. For the emails, every single one of the earlier hand raisers we've mentioned had a question, which was, do you want to see correspondence in Welsh? So that they could tick that, and then later on we'd have that marked on their file. And then we use that option for the conditional content in our emails. And we created, well, we already had 2 templates. One of them, English followed by Welsh, which we used for people that hadn't given us any preference. And then one that was Welsh alone for people that had told us they specifically wanted to hear from us in Welsh. Once someone had told us they wanted to hear from us in Welsh, we tried to basically keep everything they went through in Welsh, just because there's nothing as sort of disconcerting as you're using one language and suddenly it flips to another language. And also the areas of Wales we're targeting have a lot of Welsh speakers where it's their primary language. It's not, you have people that don't speak English or speak English quite badly. So the second part of it was getting the pages to all be in Welsh. So we used the locales feature. And the locales are supposed to show the sort of backup language based on the user's browser preferences. But you can also force the pages to display in the second language by putting this sort of question mark locale bit at the end of the URLs. So whenever we did stuff in Welsh, we always basically forced the hand raiser or the right to target page to display the Welsh version by just adding that link on to the end, just to make sure that we knew that they'd be going through Welsh all the way. We also made Facebook ads in Welsh, and then used that link to make sure that they'd land on the Welsh locale version of each of the hand raisers. So I mean, there was a lot of stuff to be translated into Welsh, thinking about the hand raisers that we were testing earlier, the emails to targets, all the emails that got sent to the councillors and the autoresponders on them that got sent back to the supporters. So translation management was quite a big issue. We had a great translator who was really quick called Jeff, who did the actual work of it. But at the start, we fell into this sort of trap of just sort of sending him odd lines to be translated, and then suddenly it's so easy to lose track, and especially when you've got so many different versions, you don't know because we don't speak Welsh, just to be clear. So we ended up basically making big translation sort of documents with blocks, basically a table with blocks of the English and then the Welsh next to it, because you don't want to fall into, please translate this bit into Welsh, Jeff, being translated into Welsh and then being put in your email. So you need to really make it clear what should be translated.
But I guess you're all eager to know, did it work? Did the spamming everyone for email for weeks on end? We'll start with the consultations. And in a sense, yes, it was a big success for us, and we were delighted with the results, with the consultations in all three areas, overwhelmingly backing a move to PR. In Gwynedd, over 70% of the respondents said they were in favour of electing their councillors under PR. And actually, with over 900 residents completing the consultation, we later found out that was almost 6 times the response rate of any other consultation that they had that year. In Powys, 1,300 people completed the consultation with over 60% respondents in favour, and then 3 for 3 in Ceredigion with 60% backing. However, despite this huge win, the fight wasn't over, because despite strong local backing, we still needed to win the council vote to actually see the change be enacted. And as Doug mentioned earlier, with 2/3 of councillors needing to vote for it, it's not a simple majority, there was a big uphill struggle ahead of us.
Well, I'll tell you the sad news of Powys, which is disappointing. We lost the first council. So 35% of councillors voted for it, but unfortunately 55% voted against, and 8% abstained. They didn't mind really how the vote went. After this, it was Ceredigion. So in Ceredigion, we won a majority of councillors. But, as Lizzie told us a moment ago, the rules demand 2/3 of councillors. So while that vote would have been enough to shut down all the libraries and decimate social care, not changing the electoral system. That needs special rules. So our final hope was Gwynedd. In Gwynedd, the elections are so uncompetitive that 40% of the councillors don't even have elections. No one stands against them. They just automatically get elected. So it was certainly a council where we thought competitive elections would be a good idea. So the results came in, and we'd won 2/3 of the vote in the chamber. There. Unfortunately, it's not 2/3 of the vote you need, but it's 2/3 of the councillors. And one councillor just hadn't bothered turning up. So it took us we did the cheer in the room and we saw, that's 2/3, that's incredible. We saw this and we're like, 66%, hooray! And then we realised that not all the councillors were there. 65.2% for our person that didn't turn up. So that was galling to lose by a single vote to someone who hadn't bothered turning out. But it does show that the system's been set up very heavily to not be easy to change. So our final slide. What's next? Oh, there we go. The window for changing the voting systems reopens after the 2027 Welsh local elections. So we'll have 1 year, I think, in order to try again. But our eyes are really set on the 2026 Senedd elections. No other part of the UK changed their local elections one by one. The devolved Parliament's just changed all the councils in one go. So we're really hoping that there'll be a law change after that election, which will just mandate fair voting for everyone. So, I mean, while we didn't win this time, we did come very close. We got a majority of consultation responses in every council we worked in, and we got a majority of councillors in 2 out of 3. And so none of this would have been possible without our supporters in Wales and the tools to mobilise them, and Matt driving around for months talking to individual councillors. So, yes, that is the end of our talk.
Diolch. Yeah, thank you very much, guys. It was incredibly interesting and great to see so many different areas of the software being utilized as well. We've got 3 minutes for questions, so we'll have to keep it relatively short. But I thought this was a good one to kick off with. You obviously mentioned this plus several times, so it's nice to see it having a positive impact. Can you talk a bit more about the different type of Facebook hand raisers that, or Facebook hand raiser ads that you guys ran?
So with the more engaging ones, yeah. So we did Liz Truss and we did the voter ID. These were all things that basically we knew had worked nationally. We did sort of one campaign and then different ad sets for each one, and then within each ad set there were sort of 3 images and 3 copies of text. There was kind of it was a structure that we'd got from basically Forward Action, who'd we did some work with previously, and we thought, well, if we paid them once, we'll just reuse it as many times as we can. And then, yeah, I think the tricky bit was making sure that it kind of made sense when we did the pivot to the local elections, because if it's too different, then I think people wouldn't have moved over. But I think all of them we sort of managed to explain the change.
Great, thank you. In terms of Welsh translations, did you have a process for checking the translations for mistakes after they'd come through from the translator? And if so, how did you do this, particularly as people who don't speak Welsh?
Well, luckily one of our Welsh team was a Welsh speaker pretty well, so she could kind of pick up on things, and if we needed things quickly changed, then she would come with the translation. But this is where it kind of came, was the problem was this all just was happening in a mess on a Teams chat. So that's why we needed to take it off and move it to a document with this is what, because yeah, things were just getting copied and pasted into emails in this one and in Gwynedd and Ceredigion, and it was just so confusing. So yeah, trying to centralize this kind of translation management was so key, because yeah, it easily got messy.
And one final question. How good were your Welsh skills by the end of the campaign?
Oh, I've forgotten now, but me and my colleague joked that we knew how to say, "We need your help," because we just put it in every preview text. And it was getting there, but it's sort of it was so intense that it's immediate now or left my brain.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both very much.